Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode, hard to believe, of our four-part series on trials. My name's Spencer. If you remember from last episode, we explored where do we draw strength from during our trials. And if you recall, our first step is to always seek God's grace. Next, we lean into our vulnerability, which is sometimes counterintuitive. And finally, we find strength in community. So throughout this series, we've covered a lot of scripture and verses to highlight where God wants us to go in trials. And I know sometimes it can feel like, well, no wonder you've got the perfect verse. You've been able to plan this, but show me somebody that kind of lives it out. And that's really what this final episode is all about. We want to dive into just a character from the Bible, not even a character, but a figure in the Bible who has really lived out a lot of these concepts, these themes, these teachings throughout his life as we went through this. And so before we jump into that today, let me take a moment and quickly introduce the fellows who are going to help me wrap up this series today. So to my left, I've got
George.
Hey, Cole's here.
Hey, y'all, it's Billy.
All right. So we will be the Fantastic Four wrapping up the fourth episode. Look at all the fours. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen, question for you guys. How many of you ever watched the show Fear Factor?
Dude,
Yes,
it's been so
yes,
long,
yes.
guys.
All right.
Snakes crawling
I always said
on
I
your
think I
face.
could do
No, thank
this.
you.
All right, good. So that's where I'm going. If you were ever, so listener, surely you've heard of Fear Factor, but if not, it was a show back in like the 2000s, 90s and the 2000s, where contestants just did all these competitions designed to either gross you out, and induce some sort of fear to make you tap out of the competition. So the question is, gentlemen, what would, if you were on Fear Factor today, be the challenge that would make you tap out?
It'd be the reptiles.
Snakes?
I can't even walk through an exhibit at a zoo.
Oh, really?
No way.
Yeah, I don't like.
Wow.
I can't deal.
Any reptile or just snakes?
Yeah, any reptile really.
Okay.
And maybe it's the touch of them,
Yeah.
and I don't know. They're never going to get out of those cages, man. But still,
What if one did?
I can't. I just can't go in.
Hulk smash from Cole.
And when you bring your kids to that stuff, you want to be like neutral on it. You want them to make the decision, but I'm like, yeah, if you guys want to go in there, you can, but Dad's not going in.
You don't like going into the dark room where they're like in the little thing and they're like
why
looking
is
at
it
you?
just- Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's a no for me, dog.
Yeah. Gosh, that's funny.
None of that stuff I'm like super afraid of. I think it would be super uncomfortable to sit in there with the snakes,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I would at least try.
Yeah.
It may freak me out a little bit, and I may be like,
Yeah.
like as hard as a board in there, but
Yeah.
I think I could probably do it, but it would not be fun.
Well, and the fear factor was for money, right? So
Yeah.
if there's a lot of
There's
money
a
on the
little, there's
line, I
more
think I could
motivation
do
than
it.
just like
Yeah.
doing it for, hey,
Yeah.
Cole, go walk through
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Like somebody's paid me just like $1 and I ate like a June bug one time. Like I can probably pretty much stomach anything.
And there's food. There were the food.
Their food
How
like
about-
brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably the one. I'd probably like throw up just from like the texture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Heights. I couldn't do anything with
The height stuff?
Yeah.
Oh.
Anything with I literally my legs just like go just noodles on it.
Is there a
Put me up high
certain
enough.
height? Like, can you go on your roof?
Yeah.
Or is that too-
no? I remember the first.
oh.
Yeah. It just depends. Because the first time I tried to get really brave, I was like, "Oh, I'll hang my own Christmas lights." I got up there and I was like, "Oh no,
Good damn.
abort mission, abort mission."
Call the firefighter. He's hanging my lights this year.
Heights and spiders. I hate spiders. Oh gosh,
Okay.
nothing worse. If you want to see me lose it, when you walk through a spider web you didn't see in front of your face, like if you ever been hiking and you just hit a spider web, oh god, like, get it off me, get it off me, get it off me.
What about the flying spider webs you get now? And do you notice those this time of year?
No,
Like just the strings in the air,
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
and then you walk through that,
Oh.
and then you think it's in your hair for like an hour later.
Oh yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah, no. I'm trying to think. I did so much of that stuff like growing up. I hung Christmas lights with my dad, so like I've been doing that since I was like 10. And then we used to go. So one of my dad's side jobs was hanging, or not hanging, but setting up signs for like new neighborhoods and stuff.
Mhm.
Like new house this way. So when I was younger, I used to go with him, and I would take jars with me, and I would collect bugs in them. And so I'd just like walk around and catch them and stick them in, and like I'd have this jar full of bugs, usually grasshoppers.
Yeah.
And then they're weird, and they just eat each other after like a whole day. So that was weird. Like, Dad, what happened to all of them? There's only one left.
I had no idea that happened.
But yeah, I used to always just I don't know. I was always I was an outdoor kid, so
yours would be food though.
I think the texture of it would make me throw up for sure. Because I think you couldn't do that, right? Were you allowed to throw open the
I
show?
think you had to keep it down.
Yeah. I think there was probably a timing.
And I think it would just.
George, what about you?
I think I'm the same thing as Billy because I can get by with any of this stuff, but like eating any of the insects, that's probably the hardest part. But also the hissing cockroaches, those were. I know they're harmless, but like, can you imagine?
And they're like huge.
One is fine. Like, let me grab my shoe.
Here's 400.
Yeah, nah.
Not for me. What about walking into a lion's den?
How many lions we got?
That's a factor for you. Just how many?
A lion is my favorite animal.
You'd walk into a den though?
I don't know. Like,
is the zookeeper with me?
No, just you.
Does it have all of its legs?
Yeah.
I think we're honest, we would not. But
No, I don't think
I
so.
think I want to.
Well, I think I would love to, but I'm absolutely 0% chance.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
door would
Hop
open.
over the threshold and come back out.
Yeah.
Like a safari is definitely on the bucket
Ooh,
list.
dude, that would
yeah.
be so fun.
Yeah, that's
Like an
cool.
African safari where you drive through and the lions are literally like right there.
Yeah, and you're in a motorized vehicle that can go faster. Yeah.
Or somebody has a tranquilizer right there.
Yeah. I'd probably want to be in the Pope Mobile, like just glass encasing with everything.
Too soon?
Yeah. No.
Oh, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But I bring it up because the Lion's Den is relevant to Daniel. Obviously, if you're not familiar with the story of Daniel, we'll give a brief synopsis in a second. But listeners, I feel like for me, the Bible is full of incredible figures that we can draw on. Obviously, you can look at Jesus. I mean, first and foremost. But I thought for our purposes, that's just low hanging fruit. He's kind of the end all be all, and that'd be cheating just to pick him. You could go to Job, who was really a lot of times I call like the godfather of trials because he was like the first one to just go through like all of them. Everybody that you can look at has gone through significant trials. Joseph, Dakota Many Colors, all of it. But I feel like Daniel is just one who I've always just, when I read it, I was like, golly, that is just such pure faith. Not to say everybody else wasn't, but I love that story. And so that's why I want to spend some time chatting through it, because I just think it beautifully demonstrates a lot of the themes that we've covered in this series as we go through. And so listeners, I hope that you can draw inspiration, you can draw confidence knowing that there's somebody who has lived through this just like all of us, and done and carried out all these things, and he wasn't the Son of God. So as we jump in, first thing that kind of comes to mind when we think about Daniel and his story is just how obedient he was. And so not just obedient to God's call and what he was trying to do, but it's when he was trying to do it. So Billy, help me out here, but the Cliff Notes version for all of you listening, Daniel was a prophet during the time of the Babylonian exile. So his story comes towards the end of the Old Testament, and if you know anything, that is like when like Israel had pretty much fallen. Like everybody was kind of hope was meant to be lost. God had cast them out, and he had handed them over to the Babylonians, but Daniel's still in the face of all that. So Daniel's in this environment where the Babylonians are just trying to constantly break God's people of their faith and turn them away from God into their idols or their false gods. Billy, anything that you would add to that I'm missing?
No, I think the thing that sticks out for me in that story is just how they were trying to basically convert Daniel into their culture.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite relevant for us today as we think about how much of our culture is trying to grab us and distract us and tell us, do all these things because this is what's going to make you happy. What's been really cool, and there's a pastor that I listen to here in Dallas, Matt Chandler, and he says, he's like, one of my favorite things is when sociology catches up to the Bible. So if you go look up, like, there's all kinds of studies on rest and gratitude and all these things in the Bible that they're starting to study, and they're like, oh yeah, this is actually really healthy for you. And they're like, yeah, it's been in this book that's like 2,000 years old. What took you so long?
I'm shocked. Yeah.
But like gratitude is the big one right now. Like there's a bunch of universities that are doing all this research on gratitude and how healthy it is for you. And like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
And so in this story, I think it's really cool how Daniel sticks to what God has called him to. He knows his identity, and he's not gonna waver from it, no matter what it is, even down to food.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't care what you give me. I'll be just fine if you give me just fruits and veggies.
Yeah.
I don't need all the big extravagant stuff that you're offering me.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And so I think what comes up for me when I think about the environment is that it really, Daniel had a living testament to what we talked about in episode 1, which is that trials will come, because he was faced with them every single day and how they were trying to break his will, break his faith. And they came in all shapes and sizes. You talked about diet, the way that they were trying to attack his prayer life, his physical life, truly, putting him into the lion's den, as we'll talk about in just a minute. He went through all of these things while he was in Babylon. And so I guess the first question for you all is, before you gave your life to Christ, what were some of the quote unquote Babylons in your lives that were trying to break you of your faith, or have you conform to society instead of God?
First one that comes to mind for me is just previous friend groups.
Yeah.
All the way through life.
Yeah.
Starting, I talked to my girls about like how their friend group now is not going to be their friend group when they graduate high school.
Yeah.
And that was the case for me. Is every season of life, it changed. And even 2.5 years ago, I dropped a big friend group in my life and gained this amazing friend group. And that to me is one of the biggest Babylons for me. And I think hopefully it resonates with a lot of the listeners, is that
Yeah. When you say that friend group, was it peer pressure of what it took to be accepted in that friend group, or what aspect of that?
Just I thought at the time it was the right group to be in, to be cool.
Yeah. So some of that peer pressure, acceptance.
Yeah. Acceptance in life. That's just what I seeked at that time.
Yeah.
And up until 2.5 years ago, I realized that's not what
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that. I mean, two things: peer pressure, but also peer pressure driven by conformity and acceptance of the world instead of God's. I think that's a huge one.
Yeah.
And direct parallels to some of the same things that was happening in Daniel's life. But what else?
Pleasure. Just do whatever makes you feel good.
Instant gratification.
Great one.
Yeah.
That was the big one. Everything from alcohol to sex to drugs to whatever I felt like doing. I just didn't think about it. Just did it. That was probably the biggest one for like a decade. Is really the thing that tried to direct me away of like, what do you need that for? I can give you it now. I can give you this now. Just go do this. Go to this party. Go whatever it was. However you could get me to just do something that made me feel good in the instant, I was about.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
So deep. That just makes me think of my time right after high school. I felt like I was struggling with depression. And now looking at it now, it was more of not feeling lonely. And also wondering and questioning if I was wanted by anybody.
Yeah.
Which then I felt into a state of depression. But then to escape that sadness, I would go into drugs or alcohol or sex.
Yeah.
But then that would make me feel crappy, because then I'd get sober and be like, well,
it was fun in the moment. And then the next day you're like, oh, that's dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you're like, ooh, I want that again.
Yeah.
Sin
cycle.
For sure. And I mean, I didn't, that kind of just slapped me in the face, is I didn't even party in high school or anything. And then I got to college, I was like, oh, this is what it is. This looks like fun. And then I started partying and drinking and all that stuff.
Yeah. So. I think for me, mine was social media. I remember when the first time created my Facebook account my freshman year of college. That was right when it was coming out, and I was probably one of the ones they write studies about, of like the dopamine rush when you would post something and you come in and you'd see the little notification on likes or comments when they started allowing those on your status. But even before that, like did you guys have Instant Messenger? AIM?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Do you remember your screen name?
I'm trying to
No. You remember yours? Oh, I was like, no way.
I was like, give me your press. But I
don't
remember
remember what it
I'd
is.
come back in college from practice, and all I was wondering about was, I wonder if anybody sent me messages. And so for me, social media became this place of envy, and this is what a good life looks like. And I started to go towards that, or that's what's accepted. That's what gets you more likes. Is like, and it was like reinforcement of when I do these things or I post about these things, even if they're counterculture to my faith, that's triggering this dopamine thing. So that was like, that's still true for me today, I'd say.
Yeah.
That was a huge Babylon. And that's what triggered a lot of my unhealthy.
Makes sense. Was there ever an aspect of comparison? Because I feel like when I had social media,
Yeah.
there was that
Yeah.
like dopamine rush, but also the comparison, the
Yeah.
social status. I almost said social, like what my social status
Yeah.
in high school was, because that was a big deal too. It meant
Yeah.
a lot.
That was crazy for me. Yeah. The comparison. And I still struggle with that today. Of like, that's why I have to stay away from it, because I can so easily fall into that of like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, the same way. Actually,
Look what they did on their vacation. I don't do that on my vacations. Like, oh man.
That's where the jealousy for me comes from a lot.
Yeah.
That's why when I notice a huge difference when I pull myself away from, I don't have it on my phone anymore, but if I get on Facebook on my computer, I can scroll for forever.
Yeah.
So I pull myself away from that and I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then pulling myself away from Instagram for the last 40 some days now has been a huge game changer.
Yeah. I wish we could have hooked you up to see like certain like hormone levels,
I know.
chemical levels in your
I know.
brain after that.
It's
before and
wild.
after.
Have you found
And
yourself forgetting about it at all?
I do. I literally do. And
That
I
was
don't even
something
want to
for
touch
me.
the app.
So I haven't gotten rid of like completely. It's a 10-minute timer and it's only on Fridays. But there's weeks that go by. I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't gotten on there. Forgot it even existed.
Yeah.
But it's not that I miss it or anything like that. I'm like, oh, okay. Well,
And if-
it's gone
Yeah.
for the week. And then next Friday comes and I forget about it again. Really, the only reason that I get on it now is because Katie sends me, she's like, hey, did you see those videos that I sent you on Instagram?
Yeah.
That's kind of the only reason I get on is for messages.
Yeah.
And mine has a 1 minute timer per day now.
Yeah.
As soon as that minute's up, I'm like, okay, it's gone.
Yeah. So
But-
safe to say,
Yeah.
a modern day Babylon can definitely be any and all social media
Heck
if
yeah.
we aren't careful. But I think it's interesting to hear our definitions of what that looks like when, Babylon in Daniel's time was actually exile. And I'm sure there's some, and maybe it's a listener, like maybe it's you listening right now, is your exile is actually like exile from your family. And that's what's made you question your faith. I'm sure all of us have had those, or exile from a friend group, not being in contact. And maybe that's what drove you to social media, was you were just seeking some of that connection. But it all exists out there. So I think it's important to be aware of what are those things that are trying to, just as the Babylonians and Babylon did in Daniel's time, draw us away. Now, in the same token, though, Daniel overcame many trials. I like to say he didn't just have this like mic drop trial. It wasn't just, all right, I'm only going to eat fruits and vegetables and now I'm good. I'm coasting. And so I asked you all, what was the kind of your quote unquote Babylon before you gave your life to Christ? But I know just because you gave your life to Christ, just like Daniel overcame a trial, doesn't mean they stopped. So what are the things, even though you're stronger in your faith today, that you all still feel like are those Babylons trying to draw you away? I'd say it again, not to rinse and repeat my answer, but it's social media.
Same as
all
the
day for
social
me.
media for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine, the one that's popping up the most right now is pride. And I was listening to a message recently, and basically the question was, are you trying to win all the time, or are you just trying to serve? And I was like, oh crap. And I still, like, I developed so much of this chip on my shoulder when I was younger, because I got told, because I was always the smallest on my team, and that I wasn't going to be able to go play baseball and do all this stuff in college. And so in every part of my life, I developed this, I'm going to prove you wrong attitude. And so I always wanted to win, whether it was an argument or anything of that nature. And I'm still trying to break that today. And it's even small things that are like, if somebody asks this, I'll try to answer it in a question, but it still comes in my mind. It comes out condescending of I'm trying to prove you wrong with a question instead of trying to actually ask with intent.
Yeah.
And so it's just, there's this constant battle. Now it's like more tone wise of how I say. It's not the things that I say, but it's how I say them. And I can even go through lists of questions with people where I'm trying to prove them wrong with stuff.
Yeah.
To where it reflects back. But it's because I'm trying to win. It's not because I'm actually trying to help them or serve them or anything like that. And so that's the biggest one for me right now is this pride of wanting to win all the time, no matter what it is, or have the last word, or prove that I'm better, or that I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. There's this like, I have to prove you wrong. And so I have a sticky note on my desk that says, you don't have to prove anybody wrong. God says you're enough.
Man.
And it sucks because it's still there. I'm like, I know it. It's staring me in the face, but I'm still trying to break this. But that's the biggest one for me right now.
There's such like awesome self-awareness in that though, like how you are attuned to why you're even asking questions the way you are and the tone you're using. That's really cool. Comfort is another one for me. Sometimes I feel like the lifestyle that I've worked so hard to achieve is almost like a frog in a boiling pot of water. You don't realize how much it's killing you. You get to a certain point where financially you're comfortable, you're not struggling as much, but it's like you would think the more successful, quote unquote, successful you become, the more like you're praising God. But that has not been the case for me. I think it's now I can more readily seek pleasure and go do it because I have the means to go do it. And it makes it even harder for me. So that's another one I battle because social media lights the fire and then I have the means to go address it and I will. So I think that's like comfort and social media combined have been a potent way of like the world around me trying to draw me away from a relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole marketing culture of our world today is tried to produce wants in your life, not needs.
Wow. Yeah.
There used to be, everything was built on a need that you needed, and then it shifted into a wants-based desire. And so everything is based on, well, maybe you don't need this, but you want this. And there's just constant beratement of, hey, what about this? And 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 what
Especially
about
with the affluent area we live in.
Yep.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and I think you just touched on something it's a great kind of way to maybe wrap up this little portion of this conversation, which is it's constant. Daniel faced constant trials. His book, the book of Daniel, is 11 chapters, and I think 8 of those 11, short of him talking about some visions he's had, are just the story of all he had to overcome. 4 different kings in Babylon during his time that he all managed to, all threatening his life, threatening his livelihood.
Sure, that was fun with 4 different personalities.
Yeah, exactly. All different demands on what his faith was supposed to look like, constantly facing those. And so I think there's something to be seen around what it means to be obedient despite what the environment around us is trying to draw us to or draw us away from. And I think that's a really great lesson that we can take from Daniel is just, it's not obedient once. It's the marathon of obedience. It's like, it's the process, as Nick Saban
And in
would
Daniel's
say.
case, that obedience wasn't go away or flee, or it was like, no, you're going to sit in the middle of this.
Yeah.
I'm going to be with you.
Yeah.
You're going to go through this wilderness per se.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not going to pluck you out because it's hard. I'm going to be with you through it. But the cool thing is, and there's been this theme and thing that I'm trying to learn is like God always honors obedience, no matter what it is, no matter how difficult it is. Because he's asking you to do it, and he will honor that obedience when you do walk through whatever that trial might look like.
Yeah. Well, and Daniel's life is a perfect example of that. Like as you watch it, it's almost like trial, like here comes faced with a trial, obedient to God. What happens in the trial? Rewarded by God. Like that's just like the cycle of so often as you read through.
Yeah.
But that sticking in it and going back talks a lot about what we've already covered in this episode, which is the courage that it takes. Courage in the face of true despair in Daniel's case. but not just Daniel, even the people he was with, like how he modeled it. But many of you probably know, if you're listening, the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But they're the ones who they were conspired against, and the king, I think it was the second king in Babylon at their time, was furious with them, and they refused to besmirch their faith in the face of this king. And he said, all right, you don't want that? I'll make the furnace 7 times hotter than it's ever been, and you're going to go in. And
I don't know how hot that was.
I do too. I'd love to know.
Also, fun facts. Every time I hear Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I just think of VeggieTales.
Hot enough that as soon as they opened to throw them in, the soldiers died. I was rereading it. I was like, golly,
wow,
that's wild. And so the courage to like go in there, but not also that, but the courage to like kind of smack talk a king and be like, go ahead. We know what's going to happen. God's going to be with us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we talked about. I think it was last episode of like, in that moment, they locked arm in arms with God and showed that obedience. And they came out. Daniel interpreting King Belshazzar's dream, knowing that the interpretation, he's basically predicting this king's downfall, but he has the courage to do it because that's what the message God gave him. And then obviously probably the most notable in Daniel's is him going into the lion's den. So the priests and the religious scholars of the time in Babylon kind of caught the king in a catch-22. The king, it was Darius, I think Darius, really liked Daniel, but they caught him on a technicality that he couldn't go against his word. And so he's like, I'm so sorry, but I got to feed you to lions. Doesn't sleep all night. But Daniel does it.
Because why can't he just override that? You're the king.
Right? It's your law.
Yeah.
So, but he did it, so I just think there's this incredible example all through those first 8 chapters of the truest form of despair. Like your life is on the line, and the courage that you haven't seen displayed in a lot of areas of the Bible outside of Jesus going to the cross and a few others. But it's really, really impressive. And so I think all those examples, though, like I've said, show that example of like what it means to just lock arms with God and allow his power to cover you even when your outcome seems dire or unavoidable. So we've talked a lot in this series about trials that we've overcome already in our lives and what it took. And we've given listeners our advice, our recommendations, and we'll probably do that again in this one. But I'm curious though, some of the strongest guys around this table right now, but we're also all human. And I know God strengthened you, but we still suffer from human nature. So I'm curious, where do you think in your lives today God could give you a little bit more courage to walk into your personal lion's dens?
First thing that comes to mind right now is the discipling within my own family.
Yes, man, I'm right there with you. If I could high five you right now, I'd do that.
Yeah.
Expand.
I have family that go to church, but I think they're, from what I see, they're who I was, 4 or 5 years ago.
Sure.
Just the going through the motions, not diving deep into it. I would just love to see what could come out of it if they were deeper in, had their own groups and that sort of thing. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm trying to head.
Yeah, man.
Discipling within my family. So
you can add 2 to that, because that's probably, I didn't think of that in prepping for this, but as soon as you said that, I was like, yes, that is an area that I shy away from and could use a lot of courage.
Why is it so hard for us to have those conversations with our direct family? Like, it's not that they can turn the other cheek, and I guess they could and never talk to us again.
And that's my big fear.
Yeah, that's my fear too.
It's damaging their approval.
Yeah.
And I'm a coward.
But it's easy for me to have the conversation with friends and people I work with and stuff. Not super easy, but it's because I'm not afraid to ruffle feathers, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting. What else? Any others come to mind for you all?
I'm thinking through.
Yeah,
several.
trying to figure out how to phrase it.
I think for me, it's having to have those conversations with people that I specifically know have a different faith.
Ooh, yeah.
Whether that's
It's not even their app. It's not even just their kind of go through the motions and
no.
Christian.
They're Hindu, they're
Yeah.
Muslim, they're
Yeah.
Jewish, they're Mormon, they're whatever. Like, how do I approach those? Again, back to what I just talked about. How do I approach that and not try to win the discussion,
Mhm.
but actually understand what the motion is and
Yeah.
how they got to where they are? I mean, that happens a lot at work because I mean, diversity is a big thing at Microsoft. So there's people, whether they're completely just atheists,
Mhm.
all the way to every kind of different faith tradition. And so how do I have those, one at work where
Yeah,
spending a bunch of time,
it's tricky.
but also I know specifically that they are of a different faith tradition. How do you have those conversations with those people? That is genuine. And again, not trying to win, but also just approaching with curiosity of like, hey, walk me through, like, what does this look like for you?
Yeah.
And then the ability to share the gospel with them too. But like, I think that's the place, because I do also, my other deep one is I don't want to ruffle feathers,
Right.
no matter who it is.
Yeah.
Right.
I want them to like me.
Yeah.
Do you think,
Down like
think
that.
Jesus thought about that?
No.
He said, I don't want to, right?
No. I don't think so. I think,
Mm.
I don't think, well, I don't. That's my I said that like, how could you think that? That's not, I don't think. No, I think about all the times he like walked right into a
Yeah.
synagogue where he knew people who were
He
like,
faced everything head on.
yeah, he just walked straight in.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to hear you say that, because I refer to you as the don't talk about it, be about it guy. So it's curious to hear that from you. It's almost a little bit like, oh, okay. There's still hope.
Well, and I guess I just thought of this as like maybe I am discipling these people that I think I'm not. I don't have to, like you're talking about Daniel's story. I don't know that story.
Mhm.
I'm actually going to go back and read that because I've never read. Like I'll be honest with the listeners and you guys, I haven't read the Bible front to back.
Yeah.
I think that's why we're who we are in this group, but I can't cite scripture and do all that. So maybe that's where I feel I should be with discipling, but I don't have to be that way.
Yeah.
I carry the fruit of the Spirit and live in what I like to say, Bob Goff quote, live in grace, walk in love.
Love that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just be who I am. And I think that'll lend itself to discipling.
Yeah.
You asked that question of, do you think he wanted to ruffle feathers? And it immediately brought this scripture to mind, which is Luke 12:49 through 53 says, I've come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. But I have a baptism to undergo and a constraint I'm going to complete. I do you not think that I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division. From now on, there will be 5 in one family divided against each other, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. And so,
Dang, I might have to send that to my wife and my mom.
like that one, that hurts a little.
Yeah, it does.
There will be family members that don't
Mm-hmm.
believe.
Yeah.
And then how do you still love them
Mm-hmm.
through that situation, but also not sacrifice your like Daniel never refused to worship God in every situation he had. And like I keep staring at that bullet there. I'm thinking like, what are the places where I stop worshiping God?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like what are those instances where I might not want to ruffle feathers and I crumble and go, yep, not today.
Yeah.
That's so good. I love what the gold nugget in that verse you just talked about. I just can't stop thinking about Jesus' own siblings.
Yeah.
And especially James or Joseph, because they weren't about him. They pretty much wrote him off.
Yeah.
But then here we
The whole
have
town wrote him off.
Yeah.
They're like, he's like, I'm God. And they're like, nah, I changed your diapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't know what you're talking about. And then you have James come have a redemption story. and praise the name of God. So cool.
Yeah.
And then to answer the question that you asked, Spencer, I think God's really wanting me to really just be okay with not being okay, like being vulnerable. There's a load that I'm carrying right now. We're in the middle of trials. Some of you know, recently married. We have a baby on the way. Blended family and co-parenting at the same time. That comes with its challenges.
Oh yeah.
And you knocked out like all three in one.
Co-parenting, blended family, and new baby. And new baby. Hard mode. And, and then sickness with Reagan's mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have had several days where I get to the end of the day and I can't do it anymore. And those are the moments where I become hopeless, and I don't even want to come and give it to God. I'm like, I don't have anything for you, bud. I'm so sorry. And I want him to take it, and I want him to be a part of that. But there's a part of me that's like holding back, and like I have to be the one to do this. It's not about me; it's about other people right now. I just have to suck it up and do this. So.
I think there's wisdom too, though, in what you're saying that I'm sure a lot of listeners right now can respond to, which is sometimes it's the environment is just the overwhelm of my environment. It's not one thing. It's just the sheer workload.
Right.
I'm doing all I can just to get through, much less like take 30 minutes with God. Yeah. So there's probably something there too. Appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
But I think just, again, trying to wrap this up is that just this courage. And I don't think why I love the story of Daniel is because, David had this like really ordained, chosen by God. And Daniel was, but he just seemed like a regular guy, kind of like all of us. And I just love that like he was just so resolute in his faith and in his courage and in his trust of who God said Jesus, even, walking the earth, and like the disciples had the benefit of seeing Jesus, and he didn't, and he still is this. But I think one of the things, though, as I read through that I like just love most is this theme of Daniel always sought God's grace first, God's wisdom first. That was the first place he turned. If you look in like one of the first chapters, God gave him the ability to like great wisdom and the ability to interpret dreams. And the king, just to set the stage, had this dream. And he had challenged all of the wise men in Babylon to come interpret this dream. But not, I'm going to tell you what my dream was, and then you tell me what it means. It's, I expect you to tell me what I dreamed without me giving you a clue. And if you can't, I'm going to kill you. And nobody could do it. So he was threatening to kill everyone. And so Daniel, like somebody's like word makes it to Daniel. And the first thing that he does is he stops, and he and the three, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, he's like, we have to pray. We have to seek God's grace, God's wisdom for what this means. And kind of to Billy's point earlier, God rewarded him, told him exactly what the dream was. He went, saved his life, saved himself from execution. And that's really what set him up. That's where, because he showed obedience to God, trusted in God's grace, sought God's provision first, that set him up for the rest of this book into these elevated positions. He still faced trials, but he was rewarded, to your point, Billy. And so I just think that it's just an interesting thing that we can all take a lesson from is seek God first, not your own strength. Don't dig deeper. Don't tough it out. Don't man up. Seek God first. Like step into your vulnerability, realize what you can't do, which is so countercultural. Like, the whole idea of what a man is can be one of those Babylon moments. So we talked a lot last time about how do you all seek God's grace. We talked a lot about prayer. So I don't want to jump into that. Listener, if you're curious, you can go back and listen to those episodes. I definitely invite you to. But as we wrap up this series on trials, I would just love to hear from you three. Anything stick out from our conversations throughout this series on trials that just really just kind of spoke to you as you've listened or as you've been a part of the conversations?
For me, it's always been, and I'm trying to get better at this, is not to ask why, but where are you?
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to ask why.
Yeah.
And it's not wrong to ask why either. But
Yeah.
I think often we stop at why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
And we just continue to ask why, instead of also sort of moving into that of like, hey, God, where are you in this?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes he's there. And we don't see him until after that has happened. And it's very difficult to see him in the moment.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience right now, as we're walking through our own stuff of just trying to figure out what comes next for our family as a whole. And I continue to ask that question and there's no answer. And sometimes that's going to happen.
Right.
It's not going to always be like you pray and you have an answer right away. Like God's not going to be like, oh, hey, here, I just need you to go do this tomorrow. As much as it kind of feels that way in the story of Daniel, it's oftentimes not how it plays out.
Yeah.
And so that seeking God first, I think, is the big one, is not just seek God first, but continually,
Yes.
constantly,
Yeah.
every move. Hey, God, where are you in this? What
Yeah.
do you want me to do?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? What do I, back to some, like what you talked about, George, what do you want me to surrender in this? What are you exposing in my heart that I need to let go of? There's so much in these trials that's meant to produce good in you.
Mm-hmm.
I was out in the garden watering yesterday, and I was kind of thinking through a lot of this stuff of either trials and distractions, all kinds of different stuff. But whenever you have a tomato plant, one of the things you want to do is prune it all the time. And you want to take the suckers off.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason why you do that is because they aren't producing fruit.
Yeah.
And so you want to take them off so that the energy goes into the fruit.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes I feel like in trials when we're getting pruned, yes, it sucks and it's hard and it's not fun.
Yeah.
But we're not thinking about the fruit that it's going to redirect that energy to. And so like what is that thing that in that trial that is maybe a distraction or a hard thing that you're going through that you might need to cut off? And it's not always something you need to cut off. That's the trial thing. But oftentimes for me, it's been a pruning process to go through and be like, all right, you need to cut this off so I can redirect you here because this thing is going to produce fruit. You're going to waste all your energy on this sucker over here and it's going to give you absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So I've been replaying that analogy a bit in my own head of like, what are the suckers in my life?
Yeah. It's so great.
So sorry, I went on a little bit.
No,
it's good.
Well,
It's a great analogy.
yeah, it is. Because for me,
analogy.
it's you said that word, you have to continually prune. That's been one of the big takeaways for me is the reminder, going back to episode 1 of the mindset. It's not if you face trials, it's you will, and you will always face them. Goes back to like my struggle with always wanting to be comfortable. Like I wish life was one of those like, okay, here comes a trial, you're going to make it through and you get to coast for a little bit, but that's just, that's not it. Daniel's story is an example. So for me, it's the recognizing you're always going to have trials, but they're always going to have a purpose.
Yeah.
It may not be from God, but God will always have a purpose for you through those.
Yeah.
And that's been,
I love that.
Yeah, I'd piggyback off of that and add like what Billy said, there's always going to be some good that comes out of it.
yeah,
I think I said it in one of the episodes. There's a silver lining somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
you did say.
and you just got to search that out and try to build off of that.
That's good. Yeah.
There's a cool line that I heard. It was you're either in a trial,
Yeah,
you're coming out of a trial, or you're marching towards your next trial.
Yeah,
yeah.
And you're
yeah,
like,
I've heard that
if
before.
I take that mindset, one, it feels kind of depressing, but
Bummer.
it changes you from, oh crap, like I did not expect this trial to, okay, I just came out of one. There's probably potentially a lull coming, but there's another one coming. And
Yeah.
when you expect it, I think it allows you to enter into that next one
Yeah.
in a little bit of a different mode.
And I wish it was linear, but that's not linear. It could be like, oh, hey, by the way, you're going into this one. And as soon as you
Boom,
get
hey,
into
next
it,
one. Yeah.
here's your next one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Along the same lines of what Billy you were talking about, of just being able to ask God, where are you? I think in the same fashion, it's important to ask ourselves in the midst of a trial, where do we see God?
Mhm.
Because a lot of the times we can kind of get zeroed in on just one focal point. But also, we talk about community a lot. We talk about discipleship and mentors. If you ask yourself that question and you find it hard to answer, because that is the case for me a lot, ask that mentor, ask that guy in your life, ask a pastor, anybody discipling you, any group that you're a part of at church, ask them where do they see God in your life? Because I think that will also help you turn the page, whether it's that day, that week, or just for the entirety of the trial.
Man, I love that, because that piece of advice you gave was actually my next question, which was for the listeners, what would be, for all of you here, you've gone through trials, you've faced a lot. Somebody came to you with a trial, they're like, what would you do? What would be your one piece of advice? Yours, ask, I love that from you, George. And if there's something else you'd want to say, but what would be that one piece of advice?
Mine along the same lines is just share your burdens.
Yeah.
The more you can share them with community around you, with like-minded people, the better you feel, because it's not necessarily completely off your back, like the weight is gone, but a burden shared is a burden divided, and it seriously helps so much.
Yeah.
It sounds super simple, but the thing that helps me the most is just reminding myself that God is good.
Yeah.
And whether that's
all the time.
Yes, he is. So I have a hat from students that says that, and I wore it to my son's preschool. And the guy who makes all the meals for them, he saw my hat, and I totally forgot I was wearing it, but I walked past him and it said, God is good. And he goes, all the time. I was like, oh, yes. But it was kind of cool. But it is like a good reminder for me. And there's one thing, I have gotten away from this, but I used to keep just a little notebook of all the times that God is good. Yeah. And so in those moments that suck, go back to those trials that you've already faced before and see those things where God was good.
Yeah.
On the day, I put the dates and the specific thing to remind myself.
I love that.
What was happening?
That inventory.
God was here. This was happening, but God was here.
Yeah.
This happened.
I like that.
Because it's very difficult to see him in the moment. And so going back and looking at him is super, super helpful. So there's the ability to remember.
It is. I think that's good, because we're really good at chalking up our wins.
Yeah.
But chalking up your trials to go back and like realize what you've gone through in life is huge.
Yeah.
Like I can't even imagine doing that from my first memory to now.
Oof. Golly.
Yeah. That was a good one, Billy.
I think the one is just, again, it probably ties back to what you said, Cole. It's just, you're not alone, but I think it's sharing your burdens, but to remember, trials can oftentimes make us feel so isolated, so alone. And just to remember, you're likely not the first one to face maybe your version of what you're facing, but the theme of your trial is not the first. There's nothing new under the sun, as it says in Ecclesiastes. So just know that there's somebody there that's been through there and would be willing to walk through that with you. Well, I appreciate it, gentlemen. Thanks for walking through this series. Listeners, if you haven't, the big charge is go read Daniel. If you have never done that, right there towards the end of the Old Testament, it's a great book. While you're at it, if you want to just double up, go and jump straight into Ezekiel too. He's another great one. But Daniel, as far as if you're looking for some encouragement as trials that you're facing, you can easily knock it out a day, a two, in a day, a week for sure. I think you'll find lots of encouragement there, because it wasn't somebody that necessarily drew on this superhuman strength or anything like that. It was just commitment and a faith and courage in what God promises. So appreciate you joining us throughout this series. Tune in our next episode. We're going to kick off a new series on recovery, which is a perfect coupling to this series, because a lot of times we have to recover from our trials. So we'll be walking through a series on what does recovery look like. So thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
And if you know somebody going through trials, please share this with them. Maybe they can benefit from it as well. So thank you.
Absolutely.